Guten Tag. Hello, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to ITB's 6th Annual Youth Travel Summit. My name is Samuel Vetrak. I'm the founder and CEO of StudentMarketing, the strategy consultancy for youth and student travel. It's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker of the Youth Travel Summit, Mr. Taleb Rifai, the Secretary-General of United Nations World Tourism Organization, addressing us on how youth tourism is shaping future of tourism. Mr. Taleb Rifai.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be here, and particularly to speak about a subject that is very close to my heart, my commitment, and very much in the heart of the mandate of UNWTO. I'd like to thank Sam very much, a person that I know how dedicated he is and has been putting together so many of these successful programs. And thank you very much, Secretary. Thank you. ITB is very well advised to have focused on this issue. Student marketing, an esteemed affiliate member, is also very much in the heart of this. But I'm particularly pleased to be speaking on the topic of youth tourism, since it's a segment that holds immense potential to advance the values that we like to advance in travel and tourism. I'm more interested in the values that youth tourism is disseminating than the business per se. And that's something that I always like to keep in mind. We should be focused on what we do with this industry to better our lives rather than just focus on the industry itself. The values are very clear. Respect, understanding, and sustainability are definitely associated with youth tourism. Let me remind you that ITB has been active in this area since 1999. ITB introduced Youth Travel Center way then, and by that giving travel its own presence and dedicated hall here at ITB. Furthermore, in 2011, ITB launched the Youth Travel Summit, which is a valuable support to student marketing and contribution, a very welcome contribution of my dear friend Sam. But my dear friends, let me, before I start, share with you a little bit of what's happening in the industry in general and in our sector, and then I'll focus a little bit more on this very important phenomena, I would say, of youth travel. 2015 was another record year for tourism. This is the 6th year in a row after the dip that we've experienced in 2008, 2009 as a result of the economic downturn. This was a record year, 4.4% growth, to reach 1,184 million international travelers crossing borders in one single year. That means we have added a sheer 50 million international travelers over 2014. But that also means that 1 out of 7 of the people of the world are making an international tourism trip every year outside of their own country. This is a true revolution. It's a movement that is not going to stop, and it's going to contribute to connecting the world in a better place, we hope. Among that phenomena and among these figures, youth travel has become one of the fastest growing segments. Youth, by our definition, are travelers that are under 29 years of age. From that segment, we have 24% of our international travelers that constitute youth travel. It's 1 out of 4 almost of all travelers around the world are under 29 years of age. That is a very exceptional segment and a very important figure to keep in mind. In this era of unprecedented challenges for tourism sector, youth travel represents not just an important market segment, but also a vital resource for innovation, social integration, and sustainability. The UN, the United Nations that I proudly represent here, has recognized youth young people as a major force for development of social change and has dedicated so much of its effort and energies into doing so. Youth travel in their style and in what they're interested in has become increasingly culturally driven, and that is marking the trends of tourism all over, not just youth tourism. Culture is the new way we experience tourism nowadays. Young people have a desire always, by nature, to experience the culture of a destination, to learn from local traditions, to interact with local people, to taste local food, to listen to local music. And that's precisely what tourism should be all about. Tourism and travel should never be about boxing 40 people in a bus and parading them through the streets of Paris, London, or any of the big cities and pointing at them, the Tour Eiffel or Le Louvre or something like this. It's getting off that bus, interacting with people, listening to them as people, as human beings, eating the local food with your hands if you have to, listening to the music, drinking the drinks and dancing the dances. That's what youth tourism is so good at, and that's what's going to mark the way we experience the world in the future. My dear friends, the importance of youth tourism as a field of interest for policymakers and researchers was first emphasized internationally in November 1991 with the first World Tourism Organization Conference on Youth Tourism that was held in Delhi in India. The reason why I'm pointing at these very important milestone events is to emphasize how recent it is that we have started to focus on youth tourism. It's not been more than 15 to 20 years that we recognize it as an important sector. Yet until today, youth tourism is still not addressed in a comprehensive manner at the policy level. As much as we believe that the future of tourism is in the future of youth tourism, because the young people that are traveling today are definitely the travelers of the future, and they're setting the trends without doubt. Yet, at the policy level, we're very much lagging behind. As representative of many governments around the world that are dealing with tourism, I can hardly see any country, and I'm saying this with great sadness, but with all frankness and objectivity, that is addressing the issue of youth tourism at the policy level. In tourism strategies, there is very rare mention or emphasis on how to promote, how to encourage, and how to take advantage of youth tourism. UNWTO, being convinced of the potentials of youth tourism, holds it for all destinations all around the world, has approved in its 20th General Assembly a set of recommendations to guide countries and companies in development of youth tourism. We're trying to at least give some messages and some advice to countries. We cannot act on the behalf of them, but we can lead the way and send some powerful messages as to the importance of this very significant sector. Youth tourism is often one of the most important segments in opening new destinations as well. Many destinations around the world are not established yet as a sophisticated, developed destinations. Our very adventurous and risk-taking young travelers go to the destination and open it. They discover new places because they are capable by nature of enduring much of the conditions, situations, and infrastructures that may not be very much comfortable or appreciated by our traditional travelers. They tend to be more curious, more adventurous, but they also support the recovery of some destinations after crisis because they have this daring attitude. We have seen in many countries around the world that have been subject to crisis that the first tourists, the first visitors that come back to that destination and give it a chance to recover are the young travelers, not the traditional older ones. Youth travel tend to be more resilient than other segments without doubt. But more than that, youth travel has an immense social benefit in terms of the impact on the local communities. Because young travelers tend to interact in a more genuine way. That's what they look for. They're not looking to stay in luxurious hotels or visit the most sophisticated places. They want to live the experience. So their benefits trickle down to the local communities in ways that is not equal to any other visitors' type of experience. And by doing that, they promote mutual understanding and lay the foundation of a better world that breaks down stereotypes and establishes the foundation of peace. Young travelers also return from their trips feeling more connected to the global community. They see themselves as global citizens, and they see themselves as better connected to the communities that they have just left behind. You can never, ever hold feelings of animosity or resentment to people that you have visited, ate with them, listened to their music, listened to their songs, and had some drinks with them. You will never do that. People are people all over the world, and we need to see the best side of them. And the young people are our window to getting the best out of people when you visit them. Today's generation of young travelers are also more curious, more connected, and more informed. Informed because they do make their homework before they travel. They don't depend only on brochures and booklets. They go beyond the story. They're inquisitive, and that's very important, because that is the way you should understand your destination and the people that you're visiting. Let me point out 5 very important elements that make out the backbone and why youth tourism is important. 1, youth tourism is a very resilient segment. It does not crack down in front of every little crisis that happens. They are curious, they take risks, and therefore they're more valuable to destinations that are less prepared and more adventurous than other destinations. 2, youth tourism connects better to the local community, and therefore it benefits economically the local community in a much more meaningful way. 3, youth tourists are more informed, more respectful, therefore, of local culture, because they genuinely want to respect, appreciate, and interact with the local culture. 4, young tourists tend to stay longer in a destination. They are not tied to a very strict agenda and a strict itinerary. They would stay 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks sometimes. And by doing that, we have found out that the average of expenditure of a young tourist is even more than that of a regular tourist, although there may be less expenditure per day. But the length of stay is absolutely very important. Last but not least, young tourists are ambassadors of their own culture to the cultures that they're visiting. Given the many challenges that international travel and tourism faces nowadays, and as we embark on 2016, the resilience of youth tourism sector, the vital importance of the values that they behold in changing the future of international tourism, offers all of us an excellent opportunity to leverage this exciting market by creating authentic experience and adding values. But this needs important recognition on part of governments to create policies that cater for that. It doesn't just happen on its own. Young travelers add to the atmosphere, to the buzz, to the vitality, to the energy of any place and any destination that they visit. I'm always excited when I go to places and I see young people moving around, walking around, hitchhiking, and jumping from one place to another. It certainly adds to the scene an element of vitality and energy. Whatever their passion or whatever their youth travelers are engaged with, the culture of a destination, which is continuing directing and indirectly both destinations and communities are benefiting from youth tourism. The travel industry as a whole has a responsibility to provide the right condition and the transformation. It is not only the responsibility of government, but the private sector also has a responsibility in this. I'm delighted to have met briefly before coming and speaking to you here while we were waiting to get ready here, some of the very pioneering entrepreneurs, young businessmen that are quite conscious about this power and are catering their businesses as a private sector to this segment. This means that private and public sectors should be working together to provide quality services that are well adapted to the needs, means, and expectations of young travelers. Their expectations are unique, are special, and we should cater for them. Joint initiatives and partnerships among public and private tourism stakeholders regarding youth tourism should be encouraged in order to foster information sharing, knowledge development, policy measures, investment, and the supply of best possible services and benefits that would suit and adapt itself to the young tourism. UNWTO is committed to this. We have recognized this long time ago. We are committed to promote youth travel as an act of catalyst to advance the important segment worldwide. Let me at the end express my feeling and hope and confidence that this trend will encourage even more collaborative efforts between us and among member states, our governments, our affiliate members, and other stakeholders to ensure that we keep tourism development on the forefront. It is very important to keep in mind that the future of world tourism, the future of travel, is being shaped by the travelers, young travelers of today. They are, after all, going to be the travelers of tomorrow, and their children are going to be the young travelers of tomorrow. I thank you all very much, and I wish you all the best in your deliberations.
Thank you very much for coming and finding time in your busy schedule. And I think we are really lucky to have such a Secretary General that so much cares about this segment and future of youth tourism. As Taleb has to go to other agenda, I will now start our panel session. And let me introduce you to our panelists. So first we have Maribel Rodriguez, the country manager of WTTC for Spain, Portugal, and Latin America. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Then we have Alan Clarke, the CEO of Homestay.com. You can read the profile of the speakers in the media kit that you have on your chairs. Welcome, Alan. Then we have Shaun Quinn, CEO of Failte, Ireland, one of the strongest destinations working with youth travelers. Welcome, Shaun. And we have Anders Ahlund, the President of International Sales and Marketing for well-known EF. Thank you for coming. Long way. We will start our session with initial data and intelligence on youth travel so that we have some informed food for thoughts and later panel discussion as well for you who might be interested in learning more about this segment. Okay. So, as Taleb has already mentioned, youth travel represents 24% of arrivals, and it's still growing. Only 5 years ago, it was 20%. So, youth travel is has increasingly more market share within the overall tourism and arrivals. It is not longer niche. It's I remember a board meeting 2 years ago at the UN World Tourism Organization that the youth tourism has become the second in a row and most important agenda for UNWTO, and it has certainly its spotlight and is trying to bring this agenda to destinations and media to push the youth tourism in front of the others. So youth tourism as a segment is as important as any other segment within the tourism, and more important than many others in terms of size, as I mentioned, as well as the fact that there are early arrivals that will repeat many times for the destination. And as Taleb mentioned, the youth travelers spend more than the average tourist because they stay longer. So they don't spend more per day, but they spend more per trip. Money-wise, the overall market value, as you can see on the very most right, youth travel is worth almost 250 billion per annum. So it's more than other businesses or sectors, as you can see, be it Twitter or Coca-Cola or the state budget of Portugal, just for a comparison. And it is quite comparable in terms of revenues with business travel. So when you imagine how business travel is important within tourism, so is monetary youth tourism. So what's the profile of a youth traveler? Youth travelers are explorers, not escapists. So they don't travel away from something, they travel for something. So they're looking for content, for experience. And it's a very different direction. Second, they travel off the beaten path. So it's not that coach experience and are looking from the bus, what's in there in Paris, but they get out of the bus and they explore the restaurants, the bars, the concerts, and they go off the Paris and they go to outside of the mainstream destinations. So youth travelers represent a very good opportunity for a non-mainstream destination or non-mainstream brands within the destinations. They stay longer and spend more than the average tourist, as I mentioned, and this makes them very attractive for the destination. And it's not only that, they also stay in different periods of the year. So they come in shoulder season. So they are able to offer the solution to a seasonality for many destinations. Youth travelers will shape global tourism in 5 to 10 years now. So we're living at the end of the Generation X and the margin of Generation Z. And this sort of target group will be shaping what will happen now in between 2016 and 20, and what are the patterns of booking or delivering product or consuming the product. And their positive experience makes them lifetime visitors. So they produce additional VFR, visitors of friends and relatives. Many of them convert to future citizens. So students and then citizens. So somebody comes to Barcelona as a tourist, they like the city, they learn more about the destination, they convert to a student, they stay over there for 4 years, they represent additional social and economic impact for the city, and later on, almost 40% of those desire to stay in a city as citizens, which means talent for the city, educated citizens, and taxpayers and jobs creation for the destination. Also, what we don't see on the screen, but is important to say, that youth travelers are early adopters of new platforms. For example, shared platforms, peer-to-peer platforms. And this way, brands or innovative solutions have the best possible target group to test their new technologies or platforms. So what is youth travel? Basically, it may be anywhere from school trip to study abroad, gap year, volunteer travel, exchange programs, educational trips, language study abroad, adventure travel. It might be leisure group travel, FITs, work experience, internships. And as you can see on the screen behind my back, most of the reasons why they travel is related to a content. It's not so much to get away from something, but to get for something in the destination. And this is an important vector in the overall youth tourism pattern. Demographics. Over here you can see how many people do we have in a population of 15 to 24 over here. So these are the ones who will become the target group up to 29 in the next 5 years. And as you can see, the overall population is in this target group or age group is not necessarily growing globally. So we cannot expect too many new travelers in terms of capitas. What we can expect that if we take 10 youth or young people and one of them is traveling abroad a year, then in next 5 years it will be most likely 2 of them. So we will have more travelers out of the same target group or sizable target group. Moreover, we anticipate as there is more access to money and a larger middle class, We will have more trips per capita. So people will do not only one long-term and one short-term trip per year, but probably 2 short-terms per year, and it will increase the frequency of travel. And the other trend is that young travelers travel earlier than 5 or 10 years ago. So we see 10 years old, 12 years old kids already traveling internationally within a school trip or with parents, because the barriers to travel are less and access to money for international travel is richer. In that regard, if a kid made a trip, one trip in, let's say, in between 10 and 11 years age, now we expect it will be 2 trips or 3 trips later on, that they will travel more frequently within their age brackets. So here we can see that should there be increase in terms of population in this age group, it will be mostly Asia and expansion of the middle class over there. So should we have more youth travelers and more trips per youth traveler, thanks to the access to the capital and middle class, it will be mostly from Asia. As you can see, the extension of that group is predominant when it comes to the other continents. This is to feature the trend in age groups, so 18 plus and 18 minus, so adults, and you can see the light blue is featuring the adults, so number of trips in education travel is decreasing. However, number of trips of those who are 18 under is increasing. So we have more and more young people in younger ages speak English or speak other languages, have access to travel, have less barriers, and this way we can see that even younger ages are traveling. This is statistics from WTTC, and our guest Maribel will talk more about this. But travel, how do travel and education relate to each other? So we have 1 out of 10 jobs globally created by travel and tourism. And we have these contributions you can see behind me. So 10.5% GDP and 3.8% annual growth. What is worth to mention, and continuity to Taleb's speech, some of the segments of youth tourism actually produce or perform above average, so they outperform the average tourist and they are more resilient, so they are a good investment for tour operators, for destinations and other stakeholders in tourism. The last slide. What are the takeaways? Well, tourism stands to benefit from other mobility drivers, so content. So when the destination has something to offer in terms of experience or skill building or sort of education building, as we will see from our speakers or panelists, then this drives the international visits. So it's not only the fact that in previous decade most of the travelers and tourists have traveling for the reason to go away from something, but to go for something. Then educational component within travel is growing. So formal and informal education is blending tourism. So this experience needs to be factored in a value proposition. The forming Generation Z is already looking for different travel options and experiences. So in the next 5 years, 16 to 20, we anticipate that there will be new patterns and new way of deliveries of the products. And there are synergies in between tourism and talent sourcing. So the benefit for destinations in youth travelers is not only in visitor economy, but also shaping their overall talent sourcing, jobs and taxes. So thank you for your attention in these regards. And I would now move to the panel and started with sort of a first question that I will ask our panelists to address. How does your experience compare to what has been said? We see that young travelers are motivated to build their personal equity to become global citizens, they need to see the content in a destination. So what is your experience in building the content, the value proposition, be it you, Maribel, as a representative of the worldwide organization, or we have destinations over here. What is your experience with this?
Do you go first? Well, from our perspective in WTTC, we look at the macro and global perspective. And what we see now is that there is the macro economy and the demographics shows that there will be among the youth will be having a big impact in global markets. For example, we have new travelers coming from women markets, emerging markets. We have to look at their trends, their tendencies, because they will be the travelers of the future. So that is very important for our members and our industry. But for us, the most important is not only to look at their trends, that also to look at the travel like from the human resource perspective, because we have to make sure we are going to be able to cope with the needs that the market is going to be facing in the future. In the next 10 years, you will see that we have a growth year over year of 3.8%, and 1 out of 10 jobs are coming from travel and tourism. So we have to have policies ready for being able to cope with this. So that's our perspective.
Can we? Ahlund, you are a new platform and technology that is used by these type of travelers. What is your experience in this regard?
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having us on the panel. So homestay.com is founded on the principle of experience-based travel, and it speaks to the connection between people. I mean, it's about a hosted stay, and 50% of our audience, 50% of our customer base is in the youth travel segment. And what we see, just talking about our data, is some of the elements that Mr. Rifai spoke about are bearing out to be true. So the average length of stay for our youth segment, depending on the reason for travel, varies between 12 and 25 nights. And the motivation to choose a homestay product is about connecting with the local people. It's staying with the local person. And so I think that what you mentioned around youth audiences they're not traveling to a place, they're traveling for something. They're traveling for a purpose and for an experience. And I think that the emergence of platforms like ours is facilitating that. But in reality, it's been happening for decades. Anders will talk about education travel being supported by host families and homestay product for decades. What we're essentially doing is creating a platform to make that experience more accessible.
Can we make this? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Shaun, Ireland is a really exceptional destination that has a really good strategic plan for this segment, works intensively by building the content strategies. Can you share with us your activities in these regards?
Sure, and thank you very much again for the invitation. As a destination in the leisure area, we target only about 3 or 4 segments. Youth is one of those. It's incredibly important. We don't believe in being all things to all people. We invest a lot in research, not socio-demographic, but needs and motivational research, and that has guided much of what we are doing and the success that we've had so far. In this segment, and particularly when you look at the younger, this is more prevalent as you get into the younger age brackets. They're living in an experienced society. They define themselves increasingly by what they do rather than what they own. And in tourism, this is about experiences, memorable experiences. Their big motivations are really to experience life in another country as a local, with huge implications for tourism providers to develop authentic and immersive experiences. They are not passive observers. As the Secretary-General said, they do not peer out of the windscreen of a bus, a coach. They are active engagers with huge implications for small tourism providers in how they interpret and animate their experience, how they present. The youth sector, more than any other, the digital channel is really important in terms of they, not just in planning a holiday, but looking for inspiration. And if you're not online, you do not exist in their minds. One, two, it means that their visitor experience begins before they even arrive, while they're in their destination. Thirdly, they have tremendous potential to become your marketing department. Through their sharing and on social channels, they will become more impactful than national tourist boards like my own in time. And so we work with many hundreds of tourism businesses. We have 3 leisure brands. 2 of them are here, the Wild Atlantic Way for adventure and Dublin, a breath of fresh air for the youth sector. And we have teams on the ground working with businesses, helping them to develop those experiences. We have a sales team who are here today who work in each of those brands, making sure that those experiences are packaged appropriately for the trade. And then we have a digital team who will create and curate digital content that we will give free to businesses because they cannot afford to do it, and we'll help them build their capability. But at the end of the day, it's much more important that the businesses have very strong capabilities in these areas, not tourist boards.
I have to say that I'm still amazed and sometimes speechless how strategically you approach this segment and how fast you move. I've seen other destinations like Australia or Canada or cities to have some kind of strategies, but it takes quite many years, and you basically made the decision very strategic, and you move very fast. You are present over here. So I only wish, I just want to comment it, I only wish that other destinations are as active as yours. It's really amazing.
I didn't pay him to say that.
Anders, you are a top brand present in more than 120 countries. So how does your worldwide, planet-wise experience compare to what was said by Taleb or in the presentation?
Yeah, I think very much so. And it is a trend that hasn't just started now. It's something we have seen for quite some time. EF was founded in 1965, so I've been around for 50 years. I haven't, but half of that time I have. And if we look at the language travel in the 60s and 70s, it was mainly about fun. You got a trip paid by the parent, but it was a little bit languages, but fun. In the 80s, we did add a little bit of culture and musical options to the language courses, but that was about it. In the 90s, it became more serious. It was the faster way to learn the language, and it was much more focused on results. We added special interest classes, or English for special purposes, to really cater to them who wanted to improve their professional future. And we added also some internships to the courses. And in the last 10 years or so, the language course has become more of a path to something else. And it has become more an integration to higher education. So the segments are not so separated as we saw on the slide. I think they are much more integrated today. But it's definitely a much bigger demand for more than just the core language courses in our programs.
Mm-hmm. And when we had a little chat before this session, we were talking about how does it equip future global citizens and the overall demand for being equipped. And the other day I've heard a sentence that have you ever seen a national super successful company? That any company and in the world now that is super successful is international. So young people have to have international skills, and they either consciously or subconsciously understand that. How do you feel it in your bookings, in patterns of they book? What is your experience with this?
Of course, we see patterns. There are short-term big changes and there are long-term smaller changes. An event like Paris has an immediate impact. I would say it can impact the business roughly 50% in a shorter term of 1 to 3 months in the region of London, Paris. If you move to a broader region like a circle down to Madrid, up to Berlin, it may be affected 10%, but it's a shorter period. What we have seen also lately in changes are, of course, the currencies. Youth travel is a rather cost-conscious segment of the travel industry. And when the euro lately has become weaker and the pound was much stronger, we can see a big benefit for countries like Ireland, Malta, that is trading in the same currency as the European market. There has been also a shift away from the United States to other similar markets with a cheaper currency, like Canada, Pacific, are much up at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Shaun, you have a great product building or development, and I've learned from your team that you have B2B strategies, B2C strategies to basically capture this target group of youth travelers. So what is the way of delivery that you are trying to pursue and develop for this specific segment?
Well, as I said earlier, in leisure we are targeting 3 or 4 segments, okay, and we have 3 or 4 brands. But the approach we take with each is very different, because the needs and motivations are very different. The channels of distribution can differ quite radically. But our means of operation as an organization, as an industry, is pretty much the same in terms of helping individual businesses bring the correct product for the correct segment to the market. First thing we do when we have an ongoing program of research and insights, we disseminate those insights to industry. We make sure they understand the nuances by sector, the differences, what it means for their product. There is some financial incentive, very small. This is not about capital investment, really. We put together itineraries for buyers. We research the markets for each, the distribution channels, the strategies of each distributor, what they're precisely looking for. We tailor a response from our tourism businesses. We will develop itineraries and bundled experiences in line with those to excite the market. And we also have the B2C, which is primarily digital, to make sure there is a pull factor as well in the market. And I know you say we have moved fairly quickly, but it's still very early days. But what is encouraging is that the feedback from the visitors is very positive. The feedback from our industry is very positive. And what I didn't mention was really important is the feedback from local communities. This only works if your communities are engaged. It's not just about hoteliers. We're not selling beds. You know, we're selling destination, we're selling an experience, holistic experience. So I hope I've clarified to some degree, but there's no easy answer. There's a lot of work in this, but it pays off.
Well, it seems to be that is putting you apart from other destinations, that you first building content and delivery through the pull effect you mentioned, and you work with local stakeholders, trade sector, through creating the itineraries, and this is more than a half of the value proposition is more than just spreading it around, because if people experience it, young travelers, they will spread it around themselves, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So it was a very nice line you mentioned, that you're creating a marketing department out of them, if they have a good experience.
Yes, and I think it's terribly important for destinations to realize there is a change happening here. And, you know, the role of an NTO or a National Tours Board is changing fundamentally. The younger generations, I don't think, and I don't mean to be casting any aspersions here, but they don't have the same credibility. When they read something from a tourist board, they say, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? Mm-hmm. So they have more faith in people they've never met in their lives on social media. Mm-hmm. And peer reviews, that's really important. And so if you're a destination and you've got experiences that are not worth sharing, or they're not valued, they're not worth sharing with the world. You're going nowhere. Mm-hmm. If you're a destination and your experiences are worth sharing and your guests share them with the world, that becomes part of your marketing effort. And it's to harness that, but to harness it in a credible and an authentic way. Mm-hmm. We always have to be true to ourselves in terms of our authenticity and loyalty to the visitor.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Alan, your platform enables people to, it's a shared platform in a way, and it enables people to stay longer in line with the longer bookings and longer stays of these type of travelers. How does it compare monetary and through the uptake ratio to other platforms that we see in mainstream tourism?
I think it's about a value proposition. So, building on what Shaun said, uptake is driven by the consumer audience talking about the experiences that they have had. And I 100% agree with Shaun that your customers are your marketing channel. And our role, even as a platform, is to facilitate that as much as possible. And you need to think about your channels, not just your own branded domain, but Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and to a degree Snapchat and Pinterest. They're all incredibly utilized platforms to drive adoption of new platforms. And so when you ask the question around, is our platform being adopted more or less than traditional channels, I think it depends on the purpose of the trip. I think what we as a homestay platform provide is a value proposition that really speaks very strongly to the solo traveler that is looking to stay for a long period of time. And that same person may also use a hotel, a hostel, a B&B, a 4-star hotel, a 1-star hotel, a 5-star, in the same year. So I think it's about making sure that you can communicate your value proposition and be true to your value proposition, and then your customers, through your digital marketing channels and their own digital social channels, will drive the adoption of what you provide.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Maribel, when you see the overall trends, what would be your advice to destinations how to work with this segment?
Well, we have done a study, was for the very first time, that was published on January 2015, which is Global Talent Trends and Issues. And we have identified, out of 46 countries that we have studied, that will be a talent gap in the future, over the next 10 years. This gap is due to that we have to work better together in education, with the policies, and working private and public sector together, because the growth of the industry is going to be such that we need to be ready to cope with that. For example, we have countries like Thailand, Taiwan, some of them in Latin America, Costa Rica, Argentina, but also some mature countries like Italy or Greece that we will have to face this situation. For example, we will have a surplus or a lack in talent in basic works, like, for example, working in a kitchen, being chef or a pilot, but as well in other skills like IT or foreign languages, and of course in other soft skills like customer relation or solving problems. That means that it's very important that for the future, for the next 10 years, we have to be working together, implementing policies and working in education, because we have to be able to cope with this growth. So that is one advice that we have to really be focused on. In our study, if you download it, you can have also good examples, best practices from other countries, and take them and use them. But the most important is understand how many customers we are going to be receiving, how many travelers are going to be going away, and being able to cope with their needs and their further trends.
Thank you. My next question will be about what would be your recommendation to either policymakers or destinations to be sort of youth tourism friendly. And I start with an example. I was in Australia in October at a local conference, and they want to increase number of international students from 660,000 to 1 million by 2025, and see the flow of international students and visitors as a next post-mining opportunity for the destination. And we know that Australia is regarded as one of the shiniest examples how tourism, youth travel, education can work together. So as part of the preparation was, for example, building an accommodation supply of that type that international visitors of a younger age prefer, because they don't necessarily opt for four-star hotels, but for something like homestays, something like experience, where they can have experience in dormitories, in student housing, etc. So they said we have to build a structured accommodation or shared platforms to cater for these new coming arrivals, should we want to attract them. That is just one example. So I would probably start from Anders again. From your international experience is hardly comparable from all those many countries that you visited and managed. So what should policymakers do in these challenging times to be more youth travel friendly?
The number one is obviously to let the international students and travelers in the first place. The visa situation in the last 5 years, I don't think has gone in the right direction. Maybe the United States in the last couple of years has improved a little bit, but the UK has gone in a different direction. So open the borders for youth travel, and also make it easier for the youth to actually take a job for a limited period or take an unpaid internship. Those regulations have become much tougher lately. So many of the policy making, I think, has moved in the wrong direction. And the third one, I would say, is to make the licensing of international companies running businesses in their countries easier. There are too many barriers for foreign investors when they come and want to buy a building, set up a school, or set up a hotel or a hostel. That is something that they have to look at. Mm-hmm. Those three would be extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at on a planet from above, and sometimes I feel that one feet is on the gas because there is a natural demand for young people to travel, because they have to have the skill set from the future global citizenship. On the other feet is on food is on a break, because we have visa policies, we have hazard or threats like in Paris, etc. So do you have the same feeling? And if so, where is the balance? You know, is it still more demand than break?
It is a very difficult balance, but it's obviously there. And it's, of course, much easier when we are global as we are. We can shift demand from one place to another when we face troubles, whether that is a terrorist attack or if it's some kind of virus outbreak. Who knows what will happen to the Zika coming if that reaches America. That's my biggest nightmare right now. But then, as a global player, we can push volume to Canada or to UK or to Australia. But it's always gas and brake, gas and brake. Mm-hmm. It's very equal, if not a little bit more on the brake right now.
Mm-hmm. What I learned as a market analyst, that Ahlund is doing actually better than other destinations in terms of that the tourism, education, visa and immigration are pretty synchronized, and you influence flows this way. And like Anders said, as a destination, give the young people opportunity to not only visit and experience, but experience the destination through work rights. And you enable people and promote internships, work experience programs. Is it on purpose?
Yeah, everything has a purpose. It's a very big question you ask, you know, and I'm trying to maybe come up with something a little bit different. You know, I think the pace of innovation is going to accelerate with the younger age categories, youth travel. You know, things are going to change much quicker. And where policymakers have their hand on any kind of a lever that can encourage innovation, that is really important, even in terms of accommodation, where, you know, some destinations can be very regulated, very fixed. They inhibit innovation. The other area that occurs to me, going back to your own presentation and the Secretary-General, is the importance of youth travel in rural communities. Rural communities are often the parts of a country that are underdeveloped and under-resourced, and they don't have the proper services. And, you know, take a very practical example. In a digital world, and you want people to share what they're experiencing, you need to make sure you got the broadband width in your destinations. So these are all responsibilities for central government, not to be too intrusive, but to allow innovation or to facilitate innovation to happen and make sure that the necessary supporting infrastructure is in place, and that isn't always the case. And yes, when you mentioned the English language training, yes, we have a collaborative approach between the Ministry of Education and Justice and Tourism. It's a kind of a way we work. I can't really explain. We operate it in other areas of tourism as well. We call it a Team Ireland approach, where, and there's an old Irish word, I'll teach you an old Irish word, mehel, which goes back several hundred years to communities, people coming together and working together towards a common purpose. And I think we have that mehel in parts of tourism, like in English language training, where various parts of government come together for a common purpose. I don't necessarily think it's designed that way, but it happens, and it's a plus. So it's natural.
Thank you. Alan, when I was 21, I was on a homestay exchange in Ireland, actually, in Dundalk. And it was a great time when I spent almost 2 months over there as an exchange student for homestay. But to make this happen, it took me a year to find some kind of relative over relative to get a family that would host me for homestays. You enable much faster way to this experience. What should policymakers or destinations do to fasten this track?
So I think I'll answer that question second, I'll answer your first question first. I think a collaborative approach, not building on Shaun's comment internally, but a collaborative approach, thinking about the tourism sector as a whole. When I think about shared platforms and the role that they can play, it's a challenge, but it's about listening to the customer. And I think if you look at trends, if you look at participation rates, customers are indicating, of all demographics, not just youth travel, that shared platforms have a role and a value proposition that's appealing. If I look at the UK as an example, I think the UK government, through its policy process, by engaging incumbents from all aspects of the tourism industry, from hoteliers to insurance providers to platforms like mine to other participants, tried to come up with a set of principles that support innovation and provide the necessary infrastructure to allow innovation to flourish, where the customer is saying, this is something that makes sense and appeals to us. So that's my answer to your kind of first policy question. Specifically as it relates to facilitating the experiences, you know, it's like I said earlier, homestay experiences have been happening for decades. And I think there's just a recognition of, and one of the last comments you made was, a great experience can convert a customer to a customer of a destination for life. And I've the privilege of being able to see the interaction between hosts and guests and the nature of the reviews that they leave between each other, because it is all people-based and experience-based. So when I think about how policy can help or support the delivery of innovation to make that rich experience more seamless, it's about being collaborative, about being constructive, about being inclusive, so that it isn't a disruptive, conflict-driven approach to innovation, but it's really a supportive, constructive approach to innovation to allow that exchange of experiences to happen, which is something that customers are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Maribel, from a global perspective, what should destinations do? Do they need to recognize youth travel more? Do they provide more funding, more platform, more visibility? What is it?
The most important is that travel and tourism is globally recognized as an engine of the economy, first of all. It's why we work and we talk with different governments to explain them how important it is for their economy, to the GDP, to the employment, and that's for us basic. And within the industry, for every single segment, adults, youth, and different. It's why we have within our member organization companies that come from cruises to hotels, OTAs, from the most traditional to the most modern and innovators, to understand from them what are their needs, are their challenges for the future, and work in our campaigns, which is the Tourism for Tomorrow or Policies for Growth, because what we really want is to avoid barriers, to facilitate and make an easy travel for everybody, with e-visas or talking to countries to work about in infrastructures, and that is only recognized when you are able to explain to the countries and to the government how important is for them this engine, like the travel and tourism industry.
I see that this is sort of a closing remark. The youth tourism is recognized on the highest level on a UNWTO. I think it's recognized on a top trade tourism show like ITB. We have Vice Travel Confederation event. We have some recognition on stages as youth tourism at a couple other platforms and workshops and events. So I feel that youth tourism has more and more visibility, recognition, importance, and I think it needs to trickle down to particular destinations. Last year we had Canada, New York, Australia over here. So let me just say a wish that the youth tourism agenda becomes more public, more visible, and more adopted by destinations, be it countries, cities, or regions. Thank you for coming. Dear panelists, thank you for coming, dear audience, and hopefully we will meet next year with a new innovative topic on youth tourism at ITB that puts so much recognition to youth tourism as well. Thank you for coming.